we're a passive object on the other. That is the challenge of this text and of understanding deconstruction. One thing that Derrida does not trust is what he calls logocentrism, the authority of consciousness, the authority of language, the authority of reason, the authority of subjectivity as well, in the way that we tend to think about subjects as transparent to themselves, as expressing themselves through language. Consciousness, Derrida says on page 454, is a determination and an effect. The same is true of presence. So he wants us to distrust the authority not only of reason, but also the authority of consciousness, and the authority of speech, and the authority of presence.
Hi, I'm Sam Dewey, Director of Humanitarian Action for the International Rescue Committee. Conflict and constraints on the humanitarian aid to the region.
So, all clear? No. This brings up, in my mind, a controversy that occurred because a scientist named Sokal, Alan Sokal, who writes books, by the way, and including a book on this topic, was absolutely convinced, as was Noam Chomsky. You probably, if you're familiar with Noam Chomsky, he makes fun of the French deconstructionists and this postmodernist business as being nonsense. And Sokal, Alan Sokal, as a scientist, thought it was nonsense also. And what he did was he created a Dada engine, a algorithm, a computer algorithm, and then he ran a program where the algorithm wrote an essay in this deconstructionist jargon. And he sent that essay, which was not man-made, it was computer-made, computer-generated article. And notice, this was quite a few years ago, so it's not, so 1996, right? And that's before we've gotten into all this new AI stuff, right? You know, so this is quite a while ago. But he wrote this article using a machine and sent it to a French, it must have been in French, a postmodern journal. And it was accepted by the journal and published. And at the same time that it was going to be published, he wrote an article explaining what he did to a science journal. And the science journal article was published at the same time as the French postmodernist journal published the article. The scientists all laughed because they thought this demonstrates that these so-called philosophy students in France basically are speaking nonsense. I mean, you know, a computer can generate exactly the same kind of falafel. Is falafel a good word for that? Falafel's a food. Pick a word, whatever word you would like, you know, that means junk or garbage, you know. And, you know, as far as Sokal is concerned, this is nonsense. They're just basically teaching nonsense. And of course, if you're a student that's part of this, you learn to fluently speak this nonsense. It seems like you're talking sensibly to them. So that's kind of an intriguing aspect of this, right? But so this created all kinds of interesting science wars issue, I suppose. If you read the, you know, this is a hoax, etc. But here was the intriguing aspect of this. A couple of MIT students took the Dada engine and replaced, and so what it did, basically, the Dada engine, which you could use, and in fact, if you go to my, I mentioned I was going to talk about plagiarism, because if you go to my article on plagiarism, you'll notice that one of the things I refer to is this Dada engine. In this case, if you remember this, I first talked about the dialectizer, which changes our speech into various dialects. But then I went to this one here, visit this page, and this is the Dada engine creating an essay, right? I think I showed you this like one of the first couple of classes. But so it creates an essay, and you know, here it is. Lacan, by the way, is another one of the philosophers involved in this stuff. I don't know who Burroughs is, but so here's a term paper, basically, that's written in this Dada or jargon, so that you can. Society is part of the collapse of narrativity, says Marx. However, according to Porter, it is not so much society that is part of the collapse of narrativity, but rather the futility of society, etc., etc. Sounds like it makes sense. What they're taking is phrases and words and things from this list of postmodern speak, and then arranging it like sentences in basically a random order. And the end result is, if you're reading it, it seems like you're making sense, right? And yet it's completely made instantly by a computer algorithm. And in fact, if you wanted to check, you could just click refresh and notice that the term paper changes instantly. It's a totally different term paper. Same kind of stuff, etc. Okay, so some of the MIT students, having a blast, took this Dada engine and they replaced the postmodern phrases with science phrases. You know, essay, and they sent it to a science journal. And guess what? It was accepted for publication. Is this hilarious or what? You know, because now you're thinking, wait a minute. This isn't a criticism of just postmodern jargon. It's a critique of any language game per se. If we think in the Wittgensteinian sense that what we're learning when we become fluent speakers of this dialectical jargon in a subject area, we're learning the algorithm of how to write or speak in this particular kind of jargon. You know, nursing, yes. War, I'm sure. By the way, I did watch the Oppenheimer movie last night. Terrible movie, as far as I'm concerned.
What?
It was awful.
What do you mean it was
It
awful?
wasn't about how to build a bomb and why atomic weapons work and how they figured that out. It was all about this personnel issue between Oppenheimer and Strauss, or however you pronounce his name. I was like, what? Oh, in any case. But remember, if you have the time tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock in the library, they are discussing the movie. That's why I watched the movie finally, so I could.
I thought it was a good movie. That's very good.
You liked it too. Okay. Well, that's all right. You can like it. I was disappointed because I was much more interested in all of the effort of going from these are, what kind of particles are these, mesons, there's developing this stuff. They had no clue that this would actually blow up. It was just all theory. Plus, remember, they were concerned that, it might not only blow up, but it might blow up the world. Theoretically, there's a non-zero chance that it could blow up the atmosphere, in which case you just set off one atomic bomb and the world is gone, basically. Not gone, but I mean all of life will be gone. So that's that interested me way more than this nastiness that was going on with regard to his clearance and his association with Communist Party, leftists, liberals, that kind of thing. So in any case, if you're looking at what's going on with this particular so-called affair or the hoax, is that it makes it look like the French postmodernists, the deconstructionists, are nonsensical, and creating a jargon that is nonsensical can actually attach itself to the form of life of anything. Form of life. Remember, Wittgenstein says you have these language games, and these language games are attached to a form of life. So there are a cognitive or linguistic way of interacting in a particular form of life that enables us to achieve great results. An awful lot of these language games are terrific. Look at the results we get when we go to modern medicine, for cures on things. If you're comparing the kind of treatment that George Washington got, where they just bled him and try to make him healthier, and today you get antibiotics, and you would be, much healthier within days and actually not die. That's kind of significant. So our jargon has improved dialectically in a form of life which is attached somehow to what we call reality, in some sense, so that we actually have improved our ability to live healthy, happy lives. And medicine isn't the only one that's significant for this, obviously. There's all kinds of different jargons out there that enable us to achieve all kinds of interesting things. So what's significant about this isn't that it just picks on the one kind of jargon or language game of dialectal deconstruction. It actually points out a characteristic of all of our various types of language games, that basically a computer could mimic them. If we get the right kind of algorithm, guess what? We can literally make it seem like you're being human. By the way, if you think about it, one of the main tasks a person has in going to college is learning how to write essays. And what do you think you're doing? You're learning how to do research on a particular topic. You're gathering your thoughts and you're putting them together in a format that's approved by the faculty in that particular criteria. In fact, we've got different types of formats, right? You have people ask me which kind of format do you want, and I'm like, I don't care. You can even write it in Spanish if you like. I'm okay, because as long as my word processor says how many words there are, boom, I can get a grade for you. Plus, if it isn't Spanish, I can say translate this, and I can see it's pretty silly sometimes because the translations are really kind of crude. I remember years ago getting a translation to translate a German phrase from English. And the English was, he's home safe and sound. Grandpa made it home from Germany, emailing the friends in Germany, and the translator came up and said, he's in a safe, and you could hear him. And by the way, if you think of a fiery chariot, it comes out a burning car. There's just some things that were silly at the time. It was hilarious. And in fact, that became a running joke between us and the Germans that we were talking with about, he's safe, he's in a safe, and you can hear him. He's safe and sound. That was fun. But this, of course, has continued to develop, and of course, now we've got ChatGPT as an interesting advance on this. And what does ChatGPT do? It actually, in response to a question, a query, it starts responding, and it responds with a search of what word ought to follow this word in this particular algorithmic context. And so it actually goes word by word in a rapid search that basically gives you an entire essay or response, right? We've looked at that before.